Hola, hola, everybody. It's Dr. J Flow. I wanted to let you know that we are doing an audience survey because we want to learn more about you, who you are, what you like, and what you would like to see in future episodes. So I ask you to please help us make this podcast better by answering a short survey. You can find the link in the show notes and it will take less than 5 minutes, I promise. As a token of appreciation, you'll have the opportunity to enter into a raffle for a $20 gift card. That's it. Here's the episode.
People would always tell me, that's so courageous of you to do that. I would always think to myself, like, no, it's not. Like, you could do it if you wanted. We're a small percentage in the world that are lucky that we can fulfill our dreams or go after your dreams. So why not do it?
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, La Doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Francisco Ramos, a comedian and actor whose previous career in finance allowed him to upend his life and pursue his dream of becoming a comedian. And he is here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Francisco Ramos, welcome to Latinx Can.
Hola, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? That means how are you in Spanish.
I know. Bien, bien, muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Bien, bien, muy bien. Okay, bien, gracias. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is the first time we have a comedian. But
wow.
Your story is like super interesting. And just to give a background to the listeners, like we've seen you in a few things a couple of times in like shows and things like that. But one time we went to a friend's recital in Houston and it was at like 2 p.m. and we walked in and we're like, saw a flyer and we're like, oh, Francisco Ramos tonight. Oh my gosh, we have to come back. He's amazing. So that's how we made that connection. And I'm so glad that, my husband actually was paying attention for once.
Yeah, no, that's great sometimes because you never see if like those flyers or something, if they do work, but hey, they do work, so I'm glad that you guys showed up. Yeah,
it worked. We made it front row.
yeah, no, I remember.
Yeah. So let's start by talking a little bit about your story and where your story begins.
Well, I was born in Venezuela. That's where, I grew up there until, all my childhood until I was 12. And that's when my mom, she got a job at the Pan American Health Organization, which is part of the World Health Organization that the headquarters are in DC. And when she got that job, that's when we moved because it was supposed to be a 2-year, like a 2-year thing, that we're going to be. And my parents were like, hey, let's just go. So we could learn, me and my sister could learn English. Mm-hmm. So we went and then that's it. We stayed there forever. I never came back.
Yeah. 2 years turned into a long time, right?
Into forever. Yeah. It just, because it was, well, those things they say 2 years, but then they kind of renew the contract or whatever. And that was also when Venezuela was not like, it was like right before, all this stuff started happening.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, well, might as well stay here.
Yeah, good opportunity.
Yeah.
And so you went to DC, right? To the DC area?
Washington, DC, yeah.
And you're from Caracas. So what was that like, that change?
A lot of it was weird. The fact that I was 12 years old. So when you're 12, you're still a kid. Mm-hmm. So you're still like, I remember I didn't want to move to because I had my friends in Caracas and I started going out to the parties and, and dancing with the girls. Yes. And I'm like, so like now I come back, now we have to go and to a new language. We didn't know English. None of us. My parents said they knew English. And then after I learned English, I realized, you didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You were just making stuff up, but, so it was tough. In the beginning, my parents, my mom put me in this like private school because it was a Catholic private school that that was close to the house, and that it was such a little school that it didn't have any. In public schools, they have ESOL where they teach you Spanish. Uh-huh. I didn't have that. So I had to learn English by myself, literally. Like I would go there and sit in the back and just kind of listen. And, the teacher tried to do her best
Yeah.
to help me, but she had to teach a class. So I'm like just sitting in the back, just like learning. I remember I did like one night, I remember staying until 4 a.m. because I was doing all this homework, and my parents were like, "Why do they give you so much homework?" I'm like, "I don't know. That's what they told me." And then I realized later on that I did the whole workbook of like the whole year,
Oh my
thinking,
gosh.
and it was just like do page 44 to 45, something like that, and I did all of it. So,
I can totally relate when, I left Venezuela when I was almost 18. And I thought I knew some English because I went to study at a school in Southern Africa, and it was going to be an international school, so all in English. And I had some good foundation because I had done like the courses from the university. My dad used to teach at UNED, and the university in San Cristobal in my hometown.
Okay.
And so I had a good foundation, I thought, because I had done it for like 3-4 years already, like the whole year. But when I got there, I was like, man, I am not ready for this. No matter how amount of self-talk I can do in my head or by myself, is people just don't seem to understand what I mean,
Yeah. No, it's just, I think learning any language is just so hard to do it. Like, if you're not in the place or in the country or in the city where you have to learn, speak it all the time and learn, or, if not, then it's very hard to like really learn a language, I think.
So eventually you teach yourself English, right?
Yeah. Learn. Yeah. It was the good thing about when you're like young, you learn everything faster. And I wanted to learn because I wanted to belong. I wanted to not be like the random kid, So like, I remember after when I started 7th grade, I came back and I was like, oh, I understand everything and I can speak, and I was like, oh, this is great. So like, I thought I was I thought I was like, oh, nobody knows that I'm from Venezuela, that I wasn't born here, and then I remember we did this play in middle school, and then they taped it and then they showed it in class, and my part, it was like a small part, but then when I spoke, I had like this accent. I was like, what the hell? I was like, oh no. I thought it's like, everybody's gonna know that I'm not American, I was like, and that's like first realization of like, oh, I'm a little different, I guess, or I'm not gonna like be how I was in Venezuela. It was my first thought of like, oh wow, so but I learned English and I just started, and I kind of like assimilated pretty well. I think that was one of the things that I'm good at, or also led me to like do stand up well, is because I know how to connect with people in any situation, So I learned how to like, again, assimilate or collect, and that doesn't mean I'm not, not being who I am, but like kind of like know how to connect to people.
Easily.
Adapted, yes. Yeah.
And like, can you, if you look back, was humor one of those things that you used to kind of blend in and to adapt to those new environments?
Yeah, that was totally it. Ever since I was little, that was even in Venezuela, like that's the only, like I was a very good student, but I would always get in trouble because I was just joking around or, or having, so like, yeah. And I used that I remember like trying to be funny even without knowing the language, kind of like trying to, and that's always been my thing. That's always been my way to get in or to get to people to like me.
Yeah.
So I was trying to joke around and trying to be funny, but that's funny. But I was always very introverted, very shy. But once I get to know people, then I would just start joking around and stuff like that.
Yeah. I ask you this because you grow up and you go to college, right? And you actually decided to go to college at the University of Maryland, and you pursued a degree in finance, or a double major degree in finance and international business. And I know that at this time in your life, you probably weren't thinking about comedy just yet. So what drove you into, going into finance? And also, how do you find ways to pay for your education? Because, you migrated here halfway through your career. I can imagine your parents probably didn't expect to pay $40,000 on college fees. So how do you manage to do that?
Yeah. Well, luckily, just to answer the second question first, those organizations, as per World Health Organizations, are like kind of they help with the schools. With the when you have kids, it helps to
Oh,
pay
nice.
like a big percentage of the school. So that was why my parents put me and my sister in private school because
Okay.
it was cheaper. Like they didn't have to pay all of that, and then with college as well.
Nice.
They would pay at least 4 years. If you had to do something more, then
Yeah,
that's on
okay.
you. But
Okay, yeah.
so that was, luckily I don't have any student debt, or I have to
Mm.
take any loans or anything like that because of my parents. Luckily my parents work paid pretty much a lot of the percentage of
Mm-hmm.
that. So that was great. And then the other stuff was more like, yeah, I study finance. I mean, that was a thing that all my life I always wanted to. I always again belong. I always wanted to belong. So I always wanted to do what was cool or what people told me or what I.
Mm.
So I guess it turned out to be finance or business. One of the things that I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to study because that's what my parents would kind of tell me. And then I started meeting friends and they were doing the same thing. So but pretty much was like the parent stuff. It was, and then
Mm-hmm.
and when I took it, I took it in 4 years, and it was my last semester. And I remember I was going to take the class, which was going to be what I wanted to do in finance. And that's the first realization of when I took it. I was like, oh, this is not what I like at all. Like it was just completely, it was such a big letdown of like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing for the rest of my life. And I kind of hate it. I don't like this at all.
Mm.
And that's when I first started thinking, I was like, this is not, it's not right. It shouldn't be like this, It
Mm.
should be. And obviously, it was the last semester, and I graduated, and I started working right away. And I work at an investment firm. Then started working interning there because my sister used to work there, so she got me the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do, same thing. And then I started like having this feelings of like, this is weird. Like, this is not fun. This is like, I started going into this whole like, Joe versus the Volcano is a movie from Tom Hanks where you're like, it's very like robotic and like every day is the same. And it's kind of like, what's going to happen. And even when I went out with my friends, it's the same thing. It's always like the same places and talk about the same thing. There was,
Yeah, because you probably went out with like people from work that, are also into finance and they're finance geeks and things like that.
and they were happy. Well, that's one of the things that one guy actually, I went to a happy hour with one guy that used to work there too. Yeah. And he was just starting. And I remember he told me, he's like, I love doing this. I will do this for free, And when he told me that, I was like, okay, this is weird because I don't feel like that. I mean, I would never work for financing free, And I was like, and that's when I started thinking, okay, I got to find what I like. I got to find like what's my passion because I can't go for the rest of my life just doing this like boring. And also because I was getting like mad and frustrated, angry, you're sad, it's always like it was affecting everything, when you're not happy with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then so that's why I started going like, I basically when I did my self therapy, I went to just go to like Barnes and Nobles and started reading the self-help book. And I read The Alchemist, I always recommend that book. It's a great book because it talks about the science that the universe wants you to fulfill your destiny.
Yeah.
And then I read this other book that helped me kind of figure out like, okay, you don't know what you like, but okay, so we'll give you exercises to try to find what you like. And everything always led to comedy. Like, and that's like the main, ever since like I was little, I was like, again, making people laugh, joking around, movies, watching, comedy movies, watching comedy shows, watching everything that was comedy was like my thing. And then that's when I decided to be like, at that time, there, Whose Line Is It Anyway? It was very popular. It was an improvised comedy where, they take suggestions from the crowd and then they go like, hey, go into whatever. And I liked that. I remember watching it. I was very, a fan of it. And I saw an improv class that they were teaching at the DC Improv. And that's when I decided to take, I didn't tell anybody. I was like, I'm going to tell this. It was a Sunday afternoon. I wouldn't tell anybody I was going. And that's the first time that I realized, oh, wow, this is different because it was like the opposite of when I took that class in finance. And the first day I got there, I was like, okay, I like this a lot. I feel that I have the talent for it. Like I was, like when you can tell that you're better than the average a little bit. And then, and also I wanted to do it again. I wanted to I wasn't bored. And that was like another huge different thing that was never in my life. I would always do something and then get bored and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
This is the first time I was like, no, I want to actually keep doing this and keep getting better at it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I took that class for 4 years. I mean, not for a whole year. And I would started not going out, but just remember on weekends I would go to help at this improv club and for free. I was interning for free, just working there just to get.
Yeah.
I did all this stuff, and that's when I decided, okay, if I want to do this for real, because then I started, obviously researching more and more, and what was where should I go in the U.S., and that's what led me to go to LA, because then I started going if I want to do this for real, I have to go to where the big, all the major, schools and where everybody is, and one of the ones was LA. So that's why when I decided to move to Los Angeles. Yeah.
And how do you then tell your parents, right? Like they've made this financial investment into your career. And also, it's this thing where I can't imagine like many immigrant parents, they wouldn't come to the US to hope for their kids to go into a career that might not be as stable as a finance career, right? So like how do you navigate that process? Because that is a huge step, I think, to clear.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, it was, I think it was I remember, like I said, I mentioned The Alchemist, and I remember after I read that and I started seeing signs of hey, you should do this, like you should go, and now people just randomly be like, oh, you're funny, you should be in a movie or something, like randomly, I was like, whoa, and but then I started listening to that and be like, yeah, okay. And so when I told my parents that I wanted to move to Los Angeles, it was that, to me, it was a huge sign, because I thought they were going to yell at me, go nuts, ¿Qué pasa? No sé.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing? But they were they were both very okay, like if you want to do it, just do it, And to me, that was like, I mean, and that's the thing, because also for Latinos, I think that's our version of going go fulfill your dream. That whole all right, fine, if you want to do it, all right, I don't care, that it wasn't go, yes, do it, go find your dream, that was never gonna happen. But their Latino version of going yeah, okay, fine, you want to sure. I was like, okay, to me that was okay, yeah, I'll go do it. And that's when I, and also obviously I was already graduated. I was already working in a comp. So at that point, I could literally do whatever I wanted. I think it would have been a different story if I would have been I don't want to go to college and I just want to do this. That would have been, I think that would have been, but it was funny because I never even could even imagine thinking that, because I never even thought that I wanted to do all this.
Right, exactly.
I never even had an inclination. It's not like, oh, I thought about it. No, I never thought about it until I graduated college. So
yeah.
But yeah, so it was, but it's still, I think that the fact that they told me it gave me that other push of okay, yeah, I should go do this, And also that's the thing too. It's I always told myself too, I'm lucky that I can do this. I didn't have to take care of my parents. Luckily they were financially well, I wasn't married or I have kids and I have to take care of any kids or anything like that. So I would always go let me go do it. If it doesn't work out, I can always come back,
right.
It doesn't matter,
right.
And that was also, remember, that people would always tell me before I left, that's so courageous of you to do that. I would always think to myself, no, it's not. You could do it if you want it. We're a small percentage in the world that are lucky that we can fulfill our dreams or kind of go after your dreams. So why not do it?
Yeah.
And so it was sad. It was a little sad thing to me when people would tell me that, because I'd be because it's people that I was you could do the same thing if you wanted.
But they weren't willing to take the risk.
They're not willing. Yeah. And that's the thing. A lot of people get comfortable with the bubble. I call it a little bubble that they live in, and they don't want to disrupt that bubble, And hey, if that makes you happy, literally makes you happy, I completely respect that and love that.
Right.
But if it doesn't, then get out of the bubble. That's my thing. It's do something just because you're scared, but you don't want to do it. Just get out, and because we have, you never know what's going to happen. So might as well do something that makes you, especially like I would say 80% of your life you're spending working.
Yeah.
So might as well do something that you enjoy, because it's even me, like I love, stand up and acting. That's my, my passions and my dreams. But like, there's days that I'm like, I don't feel like going out, like even that. But then I do it and I'm like, good. So it's like, imagine being in a place where every day is like that.
Yeah.
That's
Every
just
day is
not
a drag.
That's just not fun,
Yeah. It reminds me of, I think I just said this actually as well, but it reminds me, I think you're a tennis fan.
Oh yeah, I taught tennis. Yeah, and that's tennis is my other passion. I'm a very sports. That's one thing that I got. One of the things that I got from my dad. Like, I'm very love sports. I know pretty much about any sports, and I watch pretty much every sport. But tennis is the one that I play the best, and it's one of my my sports that I love. Because it helped me also while I was here in LA while I was trying to do stand up.
How did it help you?
Well, because I taught tennis, so like I learned tennis, and that's another thing too. Is another now that I'm connecting dots things. Tennis, I also learned tennis too, like in a way on my own. In a way, like I remember just watching tennis. I remember watching the Grand Slams, U.S. Open, all that stuff, and I started like mimicking what they were doing, like Sampras and Agassi at that time, and then my sister, she had a boyfriend that was a tennis pro. He was from Ecuador. So like he would like slowly, I would play with him and I would learn stuff from him. And then, and then he would work in the summer in tennis camps and he would get me in there to work in there as well. And I work at a tennis club as well. So I was already doing tennis stuff, So then when I moved to LA and I worked for 4 years or 5 years at this investment firm. That's the first thing that because I tell people like
in LA, right?
In Los Angeles, yeah. Because that's the third thing. Like I always move very realistic. I never move with like, okay, I'm gonna get there and and everything's gonna change and I'm gonna be a star. Like that's just not. I was even more pessimistic in a way. I was like, oh, let's see if it works,
Yeah.
But
but what you did is like when you moved to LA, you said, okay, I'm going to move to LA to pursue this opportunity or this, dream that I have of becoming a comedian, but I'm not going to let go of my job just yet. I'm actually going to work when what I already have
graduated
some experience and graduated on. Okay.
Yeah, because two things. I was like, yeah, I mean, first of all, you want to make money. You don't want to. You got to pay for, stuff. So it's like, my parents are not rich or anything. It's not like, okay, go do your thing and we don't have to worry about it. That'll be great. But no, so I had to pay for everything. So obviously that, and also because, like you said, I think I wasn't sure that this was going to work anyway. So I might as well work on this, firm that's going to give me experience. And then if I want to, if I want to go back or whatever, keep continuing with finance, I had the opportunity to do it there or in other places, So that was my thing. And then that's when I slowly started getting into, doing stand up and open mics and all this stuff while I was still working. And I worked there for, like full time, 4.5 years, just doing while I was doing stand up, while I was working at the comedy store, I didn't sleep at all. It was just grinding basically because I did everything was just, I didn't even have a social life. It was just literally just working and then stand up and working, and then when I finally got to the point where I couldn't do more, where I had to like quit, like I had to force myself to quit because either they were going to fire me or because I was like missing a lot of stuff. I was like, because I had started having little shows here and there, a little more auditions. And but obviously, you still need money because you don't make money, So that's when tennis came in. Luckily, I met a lady, this Brazilian lady who's very great, good friend, and she, I met her at the same building that we used. She worked at a different. I think she worked at Merrill Lynch.
Okay.
But I met. She didn't work with me, but she worked. We met in the coffee, like in Starbucks, while we were having, and then we talked and we mentioned, I remember telling her that, and she taught tennis. She was like a teacher. She also taught, like, she was a good teacher.
Yeah.
And then just happened. Like when I was about to quit, she said that she got a job at a private school, all girls private school, to be the head coach of the varsity tennis team. And she's like, "Hey, you want to be my assistant?"
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Yes." So that would lead me to literally just have a job that was a little more flexible, but still make money. And then I did tennis. I did that. Then I did a summer camp in that same school for little kids, where I would run it with another friend. And then I would also teach private classes as well. And I did that for like, 3-4 years until I, while making money, while still doing stand-up. And then slowly you start transitioning to where you make more stand-up money, more stand-up, but it's a whole thing. I think, it's not, again, I think it's, it'd be great if you right away you get a job and right away you don't have to make, and it works like that for some people. But for me, it was just this slow transition of like slowly,
But you're saying you went at it very realistically, because it's not like you had connections in comedy, right? It's not that you come from a family of comedians.
Nothing. Or even like a producer or a writer, because you see a lot of people that, get on shows and stuff like that. Their uncle is there, or their dad is this, or so they're already in the world of the, of Hollywood or the industry. So that's, in a way, easier just to get in there. That's like being in the world of carpentry, and then you want to be a carpenter, and then it's like their dad or your grandparent has connections on there. So I didn't have any of that, and also didn't have money like to. It's not like my parents not like, because I imagine like if I didn't have to work full time and they were like, all right, just go do your thing and you don't have to, we'll pay for everything, for all the costs of living.
Yeah.
That would have, I don't know if that would have made it, I don't know how but that would have made it, you can just concentrate right away into it. Instead of
you have to split your attention into doing more than one thing. You can focus on just pursuing comedy.
Exactly. Like 100. And it's in a way you do have to get to that point, because in anything I think you have to always be 100% invested into it, just to get to a place of like, okay, but I think, but yeah, so like it took me a while for me to slowly get into that 100%, of like, okay, this is all I do,
So how long did it take you to transition into 100% comedy? How many years?
Yeah, I think about like, 6 years or 7 years. I think I remember even a comic. I remember the comic store told me like, I think he literally told me, like, you start making money for real stand-up if you like 7 years into your, and for me, I guess it was kind of like that when I started. And I'm not talking about like making crazy money, but stuff that you can live off of, where you can like comparable to what I was making if I was working full time somewhere,
Okay.
So yeah, it took me, and that's 7 years of like literally doing every day, of like hustling every day, just not even taking vacations or not even going out, because that's another thing too that I tell people. If you want to fulfill a dream that's like this, that's very hard to, I think anything, not even this, just any dream, you have to like be a little like borderline obsessive to it. You can't just, I think anything that you want to do that's on you by yourself, you can't just be like, all right, I'm just going to do it, like a hobby or then that's what it's going to be. It's a hobby.
Yeah.
But you can't, how are you going to charge people, or how are you going to make money if you're doing a hobby, that you do something you do once a month?
I think what you're saying is really interesting, because, I think there's a lot of, I don't know, maybe wishful thinking or optimism out there, in which people say, oh, this guy's a comedian. He probably is just really good at it, And for example, something silly, like for me, I know that I'm good at giving presentations at my job, for example. And people tell me, wow, you're such a good presenter. What they don't see is that I'm in front of the mirror, like for 10 hours practicing, and I heard
and that's what makes it easy. And that's what makes it, you make it look easy because of all the work that you put in.
Exactly.
And that's true. That's everything. And that's all the work that don't see that's not on camera or whatever, that people don't see in public. That's the real work. The hours of writing, the hours of thinking, the hours of practicing in front of the mirror, the hours of going and doing shows for free or anything, or being in the gym if you're an athlete and practicing and dribbling and for hours and hours and hours, and then nobody sees you. That's the work. That's the job. And that's the tough part, because that's a lot of, like, you don't get paid for that. You're just doing it. And that's the thing that people, especially in the industry, like, like entertainment, where you're not getting paid until you actually, have a name or do something or get in a show that's popular or whatever, and then, so it's very, people don't see that. And that's the thing that I tell people is, like, if you want to do something, you have to realize that stuff. You can't treat it like a 9-to-5 job, because if that's what you like, then great, but then do that, because you cannot have the thinking of a 9-to-5 job if you want to do something like your own business. And that could be your own business as a comic or as an actor, or your own business as having your own restaurant, or having your own business on anything, because that means it's not 9-to-5, it's working all the time.
Right.
You got to work all the time, so you got to have that mindset, I feel.
Yeah. And what are some of those steps that you had to take in order to begin to become a comedian, right? Like, you've mentioned there's a lot of things that go into it. It's not just standing up and telling jokes. There's preparation to it. You have to do some writing. You have to practice. But even imagine you were going at it again from zero, from finance to comedy. What are some of the steps that you had to take in order to become a comedian?
Yeah, I think the first step to me would be like, hey, you have to realize stand-up is a lifestyle. It's a way of living. So it's not, again, when people say like, oh, I do it once a month. It's like, you're not a stand-up. If you do it once a month, that's not being a stand-up. You have to it's like literally like you have to breathe. You're thinking about it all the time. You're like, and you can't. I remember even like, oh, I can't, if I can't get up, like I feel weird. Like, even when I first started, I was like, if I go like days without going up, I'd be like, started going like if I'm like a drug addict going like, I need something, So I think first you have to have that. And I think if, you do, and you can just go and do an open mic or something. And if you like it and that gives you that adrenaline, that rush, then great. And then after that, then you need, stand-up, I think, is one of the things where classes are not worth it, because you have to be naturally funny, and you have to find a ways that to show you're funny. And then you can I do agree with like maybe taking like one class that tells you at least what stand-up is and what are the basics of writing a joke. Stuff like that, just so you can get an idea, what are the world of, I remember I took like it was like a 1-day course or something in DC that just basically told you what stand-up was and stuff like that.
Like
and then I read a framework of like, this is what it is. This is what real comedy is. This is what the clubs are. This is how the, all that, just like the main stuff, and I remember I wrote a book. I read a book called The Comedy Bible, which also talk about, stand up and how to write a joke and all that stuff. And that's it. I mean, I think after that, then what you need to do is like literally going up open mics, which is basically, it just shows that, beginners just go up and try new material or just be on stage. And most of the times it's just in front of the other comics. There's no audiences. So you're just doing it in front of, some people are not really laughing. It's just like, you just got to go up. It just gives you that training of going on stage and not really caring about what other people think or kind of like that done. And I always say too, like my thing is like for me in the beginning, I don't think like you need to be more, if you want to be true stand-up, you need to be more comfortable on stage first than worrying about your jokes being funny. So like, I feel like, because you could write the funniest joke, but if you don't know how to deliver it, it's not going to come out as funny as it's supposed to be. So, and that's what I kind of did in the beginning. I just wanted to be very comfortable on stage. Yes, I had material and stuff like that, but now the material that I remember that I did was horrible. I wasn't just very like, like, beginner, just nothing. But I do remember doing one of those bits. I'm going like, well, if people are laughing at this, then that means I'm doing something well, because I know this is bad. I know, but I'm still making people laugh because of the way that I'm doing it, or the way that I'm delivering. So that's when I felt like, okay, now I have to start working more on my material, and material. I think that's the key of then having that combination, because you have to have like stage persona and then material. I think when you combine those things, that's where you can become a true great stand-up, and the material to me has got to be obviously got to be stuff. The best stuff is this personal stuff. What's your point of view on life, or how you see stuff? I mean, if you have a clear point of view, that's like, that you just love to talk about one thing, that's great. Or also, like, you can talk about other stuff, but as long as you make it, real about your life, I think that's the best, because it's stuff that you can always tell it again, because it's true, it's not made up.
Yeah.
And it's very original because it's about you. Like, we all can talk about parents, but your parents are different than my parents. You're still going to find ways to say something about your mom or your dad that I'm going to find funny, because I'm going to relate to it because I have a mom and dad, but it's something that doesn't happen to me, but I still have laugh, So I think all those stuff, I think, combining, your personal experiences, and then just having and being comfortable on stage, that's, to me, that's a good combo. And then just going and performing all the time, being at the clubs and doing, free shows where you have to drive 2 hours just to do 10 minutes and they pay you with like a fries.
Oh my gosh.
And then like, okay, thank you, and then do it, just just horrible gigs, but those are the ones that can get that. It's just practicing. Again, it's like that 10,000 hour rule, that everything that you do, kind of like what the Beatles did, in Germany for like 1 or 2 years, where they played every day, kind of stuff before they became huge, stuff like that,
It reminds me, I don't know if you've read Agassi's autobiography.
No, I gotta read it.
You have to read it. It's really good. We got it from my dad, for my dad. And he talks about how his dad worked at a country club, and he would take him every day, and he would pick up the bad, the balls that nobody wants anymore. They're flat and whatever.
Dead balls, yeah.
And he would make him hit, I think it was like 10,000 balls every day.
Wow.
His dad, when he was like 12, and he's like, yeah, it's just, this is what you have to do every day. It doesn't matter whether you like it or not. It's the work you have to put in.
And yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That's the thing that people, and I feel like that's the way. I mean, especially, to be great in a sport, or to be great in something, I mean, you do have to have that. That's why I'm saying, like, that borderline obsession where it becomes like, and also, I know, I mean, because they definitely want to have kids. I mean, and whatever they want to do. I mean, I definitely want to push them into doing what they want to do, but I think it's also that it has to come from you in a way. I mean, I think it's, when you're a parent, it's hard because you gotta like push them, but also like let them do it on themselves. But I think it's also like, I think sometimes it's like most of the times has to come from you, because if you're the one, I mean, I remember just watching the Tiger Woods documentary, how his dad, like, he wanted to go, and their parents would be like, no, you got to do your homework before we go play golf. Like he wanted to go play golf all the time. He was like, and then the dad's like, no, you gotta, like, I mean, that's why he is where he is, because I feel like, and I think something too, sometimes it's like, you have to, that's why I feel you have to be, the main thing, you have to be real with yourself and be like, is this what I want to do? Is this what because if you don't have that, then it's fine. Just go find something that you do, that you have that kind of like obsession, to be great. Or if you just like doing your job in the office and that's your thing that makes you happy, that's cool too, but I think the key is to always be like, look yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, am I happy doing what I'm doing right now? And if the answer is not, then go find what really makes you happy,
And I think, like you said, we are not everybody in this country, obviously, but there are a few of us who are fortunate and privileged enough that we can say, we can do that. We can pursue our dreams. And, part of why our parents decided to move to, not my parents, but parents decide to move into the United States and leave everything behind is to give better opportunities to their children, right?
Yeah.
And when that happens, sometimes that means that you have the opportunity to really go for what you dream to do, Not everybody has that opportunity, but if you have it, you could pursue it,
Of course. And I think the hard part is when because I feel like when you're like, if you want to dream and you're poor, like completely poor, like you actually have more of a drive because you got nothing else. This is what it is. This is what you have to do. I think it's actually harder when you actually come from like your parents gave you like a good standard of living. And then and now it's like, do I want to do this? Do I want to suffer or do I want to live how I want, how I used to live? I think to me, that's even more like respect to when you go like, you know what? Yeah. Like for me, like, I mean, I'm like, I could have stayed doing finance. I could have made more money and doing all that stuff for sure than I would have, been doing. But I was like, no, I want this because this is what makes me happy. And I think we also have to remember to kind of like, if you do have because you have to treat it like that. I think sometimes when you get too comfortable, you get comfortable and then you don't want to push as hard. You don't want to work as hard. So and that's one of the reasons I moved to LA and did all this stuff is because I wanted to make myself uncomfortable. I wanted to be like, I want to move to a place because I could have moved to New York, but I was like, no, I'm too close to DC. I've been in New York. I could always, because DC to New York is 4 hours drive. I could always. So I was like, no, I want to go to somewhere where I'm like literally by myself. I don't know anybody. Because when you force, I think that's human nature. When you put yourself in a situation when you have to like survive, that's when you really, all these powers come. They're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. But if you never force yourself and you're always stuck in your safety, comfortable bubble, then you're never going to see the potential of it.
There's no safety net, right? So failure is not an option. So you might as well,
of course,
put your head above water.
Yes, especially. Yes. I mean, I think there's nothing better to be like, well, I tried, I did it, I went for it, even if it doesn't work out, because eventually stuff will work out no matter what, like even if you didn't get that goal, other stuff will reach, I would think I always feel that way, that like you have an idea of how you want to do things or how you want to get, but then it doesn't happen at all how you thought it was going to happen, but you still kind of get to that goal, but in a completely different way, but because you actually did it, you took the first step. And I think that's the main thing, is taking the first step. And then, because that's one thing I realized, our minds are bad in terms of like imagining stuff and fulfilling all these dreams that we think are like, this is how it's going to happen. And like, no, it's not going to happen like that. But you have to be aware to be like, oh, as long as I'm going to the direction that I want it to happen, you still kind of get there,
Yeah, I think it's important to have that flexibility, because if you have a plan and you only say this is
and you
the
stick
only
to that plan,
there,
no, that's horrible. That's the worst. Life is not like that at all.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's literally what it is. And you could be like, yeah, I'm going to do this. That's why when people talk about retirement and all this stuff, obviously you want to have, but it's like, I'm going to do this when I retire. It's like, what happened if you die or you go into an accident, you can't, move or whatever. It's like, no, like, have a balance, like do stuff, but also, I think because you can't, like you said, you can't stick to the plan because plans change all the time. And it's a lot. And it's because stuff that you can't control. That's the thing. At the end of the day, it's like most of the things that we think we can control now, like we can control 3 things every day, literally. Everything else is like, even like driving, you could be driving, but you don't know if somebody's going to hit you. That's not your fault. You're driving well, so it's like, you have to like always be very flexible with life, because and with your plans, but that doesn't mean you should not go for them, because that's where they're afraid, or being, which is not good. Where like, I'm afraid to do something just because you're afraid of that it's not going to be as no, that you need to be open to that,
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that, comedy becomes like really good when it's specific, when it becomes personal, because you draw from your own ideas and your experiences. And I've heard from other comedians, maybe other Venezuelan comedians, for example, that migrated to the States. Well, I've heard two things. Let me go one step backwards. So when we think about Latinos and Latinx in the US, right, there is this, push to sort of like generalize the experience of Latinas and Latinx people in the United States. And we know that we are very different from each other, even though we have a lot of things in common, right? So how, because it seems like that's the way people look at us, but we know that there's more to it than just having like a neutral accent, right? Which doesn't exist.
Yeah. Now, believe me, I know that neutral accent stuff. I think, I think how I deal with it in my stand-up is that I talk about, like I said, I always talk about, I don't do Latino jokes or Latino material. I talk about my life. Yes, and I'm Latino, so I was born in Venezuela. Or if I talk about my mom, is my Latina mom, but but I'm talking about my mom. I'm not talking about I'm not trying to generalize how all moms are, So I think for me, that's the way to do it. So it's kind of like you're still sticking to your original, life, but also not generalizing things, because then you can be like, I don't know how Latina moms are in Argentina, so I'm not going to say Argentina moms are like so I'm just saying my mom was like this, and then so I think that's the key. I think is to be just be like, hey, my parents are like this, and then that's when people come up to you, and then after shows I'm like, oh, my mom was like that, or my dad was like that too, or and I was like, oh, okay, cool. There's a connection there. But I think the main thing is to not, because like you said, we're all, Latinos, we're all different. We speak different. We have different foods, and we have different, even though we're very similar in a lot of things as well. So it's kind of like, I think the best way is to be like, this is my experience. Even if you want to talk about somebody you dated, you want to my experience with this person was like this. That doesn't mean because they're from that country they're all like that, or because they're and I feel that's how I started, when I started working on material, that's how I wanted to do it that way, just to be, and also to be more universal as well, because that's one of my main things that I like to do with my stand-up and my comedy, is to be universal. And by universal I mean, it's like, so it doesn't matter where you're from. If you know English, you're going to understand it. Or when I do it in Spanish, I just want people to know, so all my material is kind of like universal in terms of I'm not talking about anything specific to something, to a city or to something, because that's not how I like to do comedy.
Yeah, but it's universal, but not generalistic, maybe, right?
Yes. And universal, what I mean is universal topics.
Yeah.
Universal, talking about stuff that anybody can has had an experience or hear about it. So then be like, because to me, that's half of the thing of people getting a joke. If people don't understand what you're saying, they're not going to laugh. And it's not because the joke is not fun. It's because they're like, I don't understand what you're referring. They can't relate. So it's like, it has to be relatable. So I like to do, topics that are relatable, and then I make them very detailed and original, because I'm talking about stuff that happened to me or my own point of view that happened. And that's how I feel like you get people to connect with the universal aspect of it, or the universal topic, but then they go like, oh, but then I'm talking about something that happened to me.
Yeah.
So then I think that makes it easier. And then if you're from Venezuela, or you have a Latino family, then if I talk about that, then people are going to relate. Then people are going to relate even a little more. They're going to get it a little more. But that doesn't mean that the person that doesn't have that will not understand it either.
Yeah. And so another thing that it's interesting to me, for example, in one of the places where we found you, I don't think we were expecting you there, but we watched Gentefied, and we like it a lot. I think, and I talk about my husband and I, and the show for us is a little different from our experience. But before we talk about it, since you've been in the show, you know what the show is, at least the first season. Like, how would you describe Gentefied to the audience that might not have seen it?
Yeah, no, Gentefied, it's a great show that I was proud to be on, and very speaking of dreams, as a way of doing it, because the two creators who did it basically started just by doing web series, and then slowly, then it took a journey to then get it to like produce, some producer company, and then to Netflix, so it was like, so it's great to have just to get to that point. But yeah, I think Gentefied, and it's speaking like for them is they definitely did it from their own experiences of growing up in, and I think I'm not trying to be 100%. I don't know if I'm 100% correct, but I think the two of them grew up in California, area. So a lot of the topics that they talk or the characters come from there. From living in Los Angeles and in these neighborhoods, Boyle Heights, for example, or somewhere. So it is a show like that's like very specific to that. So yeah, so I could see how. And that's the thing that, like, yeah, for other Latinos that, let's say, not even in the US, because you can even understand more stuff, but even stuff that people that are like in South America, that are in Nicaragua, for example, or something, they're watching and they're like, they're not gonna relate to a lot of this stuff because they didn't go through it,
Yeah.
So I think that's that'd be the only, I think that's the thing that people sometimes when they would see it, because I would get from other friends that I'm like, oh yeah, I like it, but I mean, I don't get some of this stuff. I was like, yeah, because you didn't live in LA, and it's a specific culture, that's very, that people grew up there.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a different story of migration as well.
Yes.
At least different from my story of migration, and my experience as an immigrant is a very different story, in which these are generations that maybe are families that somebody in their generations crossed the border, and they started working in California, and they have mixed status families. Some of them are undocumented, and some of them are not. So it's a lot more complex than I could ever imagine, for example, as a person who came here to study.
Because or for me, like, we came because of my mom's work and a work visa, so we were never in the coming, we were never on the coming, we were always legal, for example. It was never a thing of like, watch out, they're coming, because we never experienced that. So it's the same thing for me. That's the thing that I can't relate to, because I never went through it, or I had family that went through it.
Right. But I think what's important in watching a show like that, for example, is, as a person who is a Latina in the US, is a gateway to understanding the experience of other people who are also of Latinx heritage,
Exactly.
And it's
No, I think that's a cool thing too, of like when I was part of the show and watching the show, that's a thing too that I learned. It was like, this is stuff that I didn't know that this people went through it like this, and it's great to learn from that, because again, it's good to see. It's always good to see different experiences, because that's how you get better as a person. So it's like you see like, because it's also then easier to understand people where they're coming from when they're saying something or whatever, because like, oh, you went through that, I didn't go through that, but now I get why you would don't like that type of thing, because you came from that. So I love the show, but I had to definitely try to understand where the story was coming from, right? Because I couldn't relate right away, and even sometimes it would be seen by some people as a, like, maybe, these people don't want to help themselves, they're holding themselves back, or things like that, or like, why can't you just decide to move to Stanford to go to school and forget about your family, but this goes back to what we were saying before. Not everybody has the privilege of not having to take care of their family and not having to think about how you're going to help the other people who also made sacrifices for you. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's everybody has their own different ways. And again, it's hard when you do have to take care of family, or you have to do this stuff, because Yeah, I mean, and because you cannot do what you want to, like, for example, when I said before of like, yeah, when I came to LA and I had to work full time just to pay for everything, all my living costs, for another person, that was my thing of like, oh, I still went for, it could be another person. I'm like, no, I had to imagine I had to do that and then also pay for my parents or pay for
Exactly.
my, then I had less time to even do stand up,
Exactly.
or pursue, because then I'll have to, or worry more about that as well. So it's harder, and that doesn't mean you can't do it, but yeah, it's definitely harder when you have a lot of other responsibilities that you have to, take care of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think, it's sad that the show was canceled and hopefully somebody picks it up somewhere else. But another thing that was maybe different from the show, and it maybe shows that it comes from Latinx creators as well, is that when you played your character, do they call him Felix or Felix? I think, right?
Felix or Felix,
Yeah.
yeah, Felix or Felix, yeah.
Yeah. You were able to perform in your natural original accent, right? What did that feel for you?
That was awesome. I mean, because like you mentioned, neutral accent. That's the thing that ever since I started, moved here and started going into auditions. That was the first, especially Spanish auditions. They're like neutral accent, and I'm like, which and I think that was also like, yeah, maybe like I think hopefully it starts changing more and more, because yeah, that was like maybe like 10 years ago when I started, but like, because I always thought, I was like, who cares? I mean, I get it in a way because they're, a lot of the commercials are, for them more like the Mexican, crowd or public. So like they want to cater to that. So they need somebody to have that kind of like neutral accent or more of a Mexican sounding accent. But yeah, I mean, I hope like it gets to the point where like anybody can just go, you can just do any accent that you want, and as long as people don't worry about it. But for me, it was very cool to be able to do that, because again, I never had the opportunity to do Venezuelan accent at all, and what's funny was like the character was actually from, I feel either Guatemala, I think. I don't know. I mean, one is from Central America. That was the original character. I remember when I got the part, I had a friend who was helping me, like, try to sound from Guatemala, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to, and then luckily when I got to the set, the director, creator told me like, no, I just talk like you, let's make it Venezuelan, and that was such a huge relief, and also I liked it too because it was very realistic to what's happening now with Venezuelan immigration. So it's like, why not do that? Why not? Because like, I would have loved to explore that character and see what was his immigration. Why is he there? And to make it real, like if I would have written the thing, like it would have been like, make it even more real. It's like, oh, this guy used to actually, graduated, he's an attorney, but he can do, he graduated as an attorney in Venezuela, so he can get a job here. So now he's working, which I know, and you probably know a lot of stories like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not? So I like that. I like that because it gives it more of a realism, and also to show that, there's, like, and also for the American audience to be like, oh, there's all the other Latinos besides.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like,
because who, I mean, I'm sure that is probably not to generalize, but majority of the people who are making the executive decisions are not people from Latinx backgrounds, and they don't necessarily understand.
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the good things about that show, because it was a lot of people that were, from Latinx background that were making, so that's why they could make it even more original to their experience. But a lot of the times, people that they don't know, they have no idea, like the Latino experience of like, different cultures, different countries, different things, different, ways of. So it's like, so yeah, it was great and hopefully, that's the new trend, to have more shows that are more distinct, or to show different facets of other, not even countries, but I think what you said, I liked about like different immigration,
immigration
Experiences, stories
experiences.
that it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the one like, oh, like you said, you came as a student,
yeah.
have friends. And I know a lot of friends who came as a student, they stayed, or they got a job, and then other friends who came from work, or other friends because their parents came, but like, and they were just brought here, but they were older already,
Yep, yep.
so it's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that's a new immigration that hasn't been tapped,
Yeah.
immigration stories that, like, because like you said, the ones that are older generations where they moved, they came here a while back and then they had kids here and their kids had kids. So like, that's a different immigration story
Exactly.
from people like us that came here when we were
Yeah.
older,
Right, right. And I tell you why I also think it's a very interesting, I mean, it's a great show, and the story that they're telling is such an important story is because, even within the Latino community, we have, I mean, we have colorism that's not a realization of today. We have those issues with our like racism within the Latino community, and we also have this sort of like sense of superiority for that we think oh, maybe I came here in a plane, so I'm not as bad, or I'm better than the person that crossed the river, for example, right? But I'm telling you, I live in Houston, and there's a whole bunch of people from Venezuela crossing the border, going through the river.
Wow.
And I'm from Venezuela, and I can't imagine, I'm starting to listen to those stories, and I see also the group of friends that I have and how uninterested we are of learning what it is like to have to leave everything and to risk your life to cross the river, I think we need to learn more about that, because in 10 years, in 20 years, we are that generation. We are those stories of migration.
That's true. No, that's completely true. I mean, and that's the thing too, that I would never think of, because you would think all the Venezuelans people that would come here, before it was like, oh yeah, they came on a plane, but now you see all these new things, which I never even realized it, that I didn't even know that. I mean, when you told me that, I didn't even know that people were from Venezuela were going, which is, that's that. And that shows you, I mean, because it's like, I was like, if people are going through that, I mean, imagine how bad their life is.
Exactly.
Because there's no way people will do that. If they were living comfortably, not even like being rich, if they were living just having the basic needs, they don't move. And that's every immigrant, like nobody wants to move, especially from their own country. You always feel like, but if you do it, it's because you really are strong, especially going through those, through that, journey.
Yeah. No, I mean, even moving here with your family, I guess, was like, I can bet it was hard.
It was hard
for me to move here too.
Yeah, it's already hard psychologically, just mentally. But then if you have to go through like, well, I don't know, we're gonna, then you're doing illegally, where you don't know like if you're gonna get caught, or then you live in, you don't know where you're gonna live, you don't know what work you're gonna get. It's like, that's even, I mean, I can't even relate to it, because I never went through it.
I think it's, I mean, there's so many stories, and I hope that producers become a little more aware of the opportunities of the stories that they have to tell, and also we somehow become more vocal and appear in more spaces where we can, voice our opinions and tell the story from our point of view as well.
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, I love to listen to this, because I'm always thinking of ideas for shows. So like, it's always good to like listen to this, because this is great to have, to especially, maybe have those stories, being greenlit, that'd be great,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's close the show with a little lighter tone. The last question I have for you is, imagine that a person, like your best friend, comes to LA, and they want to see you and want you to show them around, but unfortunately you are at a show in Houston and can't show them around. So you tell them your top 3 places to go see or do in LA, and what would you recommend?
Well, that's a tough one because no, not kidding. I mean, like, because I'm thinking, who's the friend who's coming with when I told them I'm not gonna be here, and now you're here. No, no. I think, well, LA. That's funny because LA is so huge. It's like, I mean, it's like very spread out. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so it's like it's a lot of things. I mean, I think definitely LA. I think one of the first thing to go see is actually go to the Pacific Ocean and go like Malibu and drive around there
Mm.
because it's such a beautiful like you just see all the beaches there and like and you go through and when you drive your car you can see like the ocean is just nice, like
Mm-hmm.
very panoramic views. And you can, if you want to hike, you can go hike and do that, or go to the beach and surf, or just, whatever, So I would do, I think that's a very LA thing to experience. In terms of shows, I don't, shows, stand up. The stand up, and there's so much stuff here. There's also a lot of, I went to, I just recently I went to a friend's gallery showing that he had
Mm-hmm.
a gallery. He painted, so he had paint. So like, there's so much stuff to do here. That's just not just stand up, but also paintings. Small concerts in venues. Play
Mm.
jazz and or rock or sporting events as well. There's some. You can go. There's always sports happening here in LA. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a season with like the Lakers or the hockey for the Kings or or soccer. But and then another I think another great thing to go see is the I like the Griffith
Uh-huh.
Observatory.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool. I think it's a great. There's a little history with James Dean. The movie that he did was there, and then
Mm.
and he also has like great panoramic views of seeing the whole city.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I actually do think I think it's always try to do the stuff that's not in the tourist kind of
Yeah,
things,
I will. Yeah, love
because
it.
those are not the good. Like people go like for example go to Hollywood Boulevard, which it's like you get there and you go like this is it. It's like one street and like it's
The
just
stars
like
are dirty.
yeah, the stars are dirty. It's just like what's going on here, like so it's kind of like yeah, if you want to go through it fine, but it's kind of like it's not you're not missing anything if you don't go there,
Right.
like it's like you could just I think it's better to explore other we went to for example like Silver Lake, which is another city part that's in LA, and they have like great like little shops and little restaurants and like and it's called the Silver Lake refinery, no, or something. I forget now what it is, but it's a nice like space event where you can like walk and like and it has dogs and and like it's very beautiful and it's like very outdoorsy stuff because that's what LA has a lot,
Mm-hmm.
like very outdoorsy. Like if you like doing anything outdoors,
Mm-hmm.
the LA is like the place to be. Like you can do anything that you want here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go snowboard, snow skiing like for
Yeah.
2 hours, and what was the last thing? And then, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, another place, Venice or Santa Monica is a great place to be, like, Abbot Kinney is a very nice, cool street that has a lot of like,
Mm.
restaurants and very cool shops, that you walk around. Um, Downtown has also gotten much better. Downtown was not that good, but
Mm.
now downtown is great. Yesterday, for example, went to the Broad Museum, which they have like contemporary art. They have like great artists from like from U.S. contemporary art. Like what's the guy? I forget now. The guy who did the Campbell soup.
Oh,
I forget his name now.
yeah.
I literally saw it yesterday, but like but yeah,
Well,
there's always stuff. I mean, there's always great stuff to do. I just recommend, yeah, try to do the stuff that's not so touristy.
for sure.
Go to the stuff that's like, oh, I never, that people go like, you gotta. That is stuff that's not as popular as people, put it out to
Absolutely.
be.
Yeah. And you're coming to Houston for a show. Tell us more about that.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm going to go be there on Wednesday, March 9th at the Houston Improv. That shows at 7, I believe, starts at 7 p.m. And it's going to be great. I'm excited because it's going to be my first time performing at that club, the improv clubs, which are are very popular around the US, and I'm very excited to be performing there. I mean, I had a great time. When I went there last year, when I saw you on the show, that was a fun shows that I had those 2 nights. And so I'm hopefully to do, we can get more people, because I know those clubs are pretty big.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can get
bigger.
This is bigger.
Yeah. I went there to see Cristela. We went there to see Cristela Alonso. And it was definitely bigger than the venue where we were.
Yeah.
We're going to tell our friends to go, and I'm going to tell the people and see. And if anybody's listening to the show, I mean, definitely, I think it's a great time. And the show is in English. So like we said,
it's in English. I'll probably throw some words in Spanish there, but mostly in English.
Exactly.
But I think it'll be great. It'll be fun. And I am looking forward to it. And hopefully we can have a good crowd, because I think these are it's my first time. So hopefully, you do well, and then they bring you back, and then to do like a weekend show, for example,
perfect.
when I do more so that's just kind of like a good, the first step to get into the clubs, kind of thing. So
awesome.
Looking forward to having a good crowd there. So definitely come. If you have any information, please, you can contact me on Instagram or Facebook or on my website. I have all my information and all the links to the tickets there as well.
Okay. And we'll put it on the show notes as well.
Awesome.
All right. Francisco, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you. It was so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for listening. If you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at LatinxCan. If you have questions or feedback, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you want to support our project, please leave a review. We have made it easy for you and added the links to the show notes. That's it for now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and remember,